A Long Walk to Water, Chapter 18. Nia waited her turn in line. She was holding a plastic bottle. The well was finally finished. The gravel had been put down to make a foundation. The pump had been installed, and the cement had been poured and left to dry. Before the pump was used for the first time, the villagers all gathered around. The leader of the workers brought out a big sign made of blue canvas. The canvas had writing on it. The writing was in English, but the leader spoke to Nia's uncle, and Uncle told everyone what the sign said. In honor of Elm Street School, Uncle said. This is the name of a school in America. The students at the school raised the money for this well to be dug. Uncle held up one end of the sign. The workers' leader held up the other end. Everyone else stood around it, and one of the workers took their picture. The picture would be sent to the American school so that the students there could see the well and the people who were now using it. Then the villagers all got in line to wait their turn for water from the new well. When Nia reached the head of the line, she smiled shyly at her uncle, who paused in his work for a moment to smile back at her. Then he began moving the pump handle, up and down, up and down. A stream of water flowed from the mouth of the pump. Nia held her bottle underneath the pump mouth. The bottle filled up quickly. She stepped aside to let the next person fill a bottle. Then she drank. The water was delicious. It wasn't warm or muddy like the water from the pond. It was cool and clear. Nia stopped drinking and held up the bottle so she could look at it. Funny that something without any color at all could look so nice. She drank a few more sips, then glanced around. Everyone had a bottle or a cup. They were drinking that lovely water, or waiting in line for more, or talking and laughing. It was a celebration. An old granddad standing not far from Nia shook his head. In a low voice he said, "This is where we used to gather for our bonfire celebrations. I have been sitting on this ground my whole life, and all those years I never knew that I was sitting on top of this good water." Everyone around him laughed. Nia laughed too. In a few more days the school would be finished. Nia and Depp and Akir would all go to school, along with the other children. Next year there would be a marketplace, where the villagers could sell and buy vegetables and chickens and other goods. There was even talk of a clinic someday, a medical clinic, so they wouldn't have to walk so far to get help, as they had to when Akir was ill. It was the well that was bringing the village all these good things. But the well was not far. But the well was not far. But the well was not for their use alone. People would come from miles around to fetch the good clean water. Nia knew from listening to the grown-ups that the crew leader had made many arrangements concerning the well. No one was ever to be refused water. Some of the villagers would be responsible for maintaining the well. They would be busy with this new work, so the entire village was to help them with their crops and cattle. Other villagers, including Nia's uncle, would resolve any disputes that arose. The well would change their lives in many ways. I will never again have to walk to the pond for water, Nia thought. She wandered around a little, sipping at her cool, fresh drink. Then she caught sight of the crew leader. He was standing by himself, leaning against one of the trucks and watching her uncle work the pump. Depp saw her looking at the man. That man, the boss of the workers, Depp said. You know he is Dinka? Nia looked at Depp in astonishment. The Dinka and the Newer did not look very different physically. You had to look at the scar patterns on people's faces to tell the tribes apart. Dinka scar patterns were different from those of the Newer, but the crew leader had no scars on his face. Nia had heard some of the teenage boys talking about that, wondering why he had no scars when clearly. Nia had heard some of the teenage boys talking about that, wondering why he had no scars when clearly he was a grown man. The leader's assistant was Newer. So were most of the crew. They all had Newer scars. Nia hadn't thought about it much, but she realized now that she had always assumed that the leader was Newer too. The Dinka and the Newer were enemies, had been for hundreds of years. Why would a Dinka bring water to us, she wondered aloud. I heard Uncle and Father talking about him, Depp said. He has drilled many wells for his own people. This year he has decided to drill for the Newer as well. Depp had not really answered Nia's questions. He probably doesn't know the answer, she thought, but now Nia felt there was something she had to do. She walked over to where the man was standing. He didn't notice her at first, so she waited quietly. Then he saw her. Hello, he said. Shyness flooded through Nia. For a moment she didn't think she would be able to speak. She looked down at the ground, then at the stream of water still flowing from the pump mouth, and she found her voice. Thank you, she said, and looked up at him bravely. Thank you for bringing the water. The man smiled. What is your name? He asked. I am Nia. I am happy to meet you, Nia, he said. My name is Salva.